Imagine sitting in your house right now, like lounging in your living room.
Right, just totally relaxed.
Exactly. And you're feeling pretty good about yourself. You assume, quite naturally, that you are the only truly intelligent, articulate being in the entire building.
Which, most of us do.
We totally do. But what you don't realize is that the neighbors downstairs have been having these sophisticated, culturally rich, phonologically complex conversations for like 20 million years.
Yeah, it's wild to think about.
And you've just been sitting on the floor listening to the muffled sounds through the floorboards, assuming they were just, I don't know, making random basic noise.
Just banging on the pipes, right?
Exactly. It is a massive cell phone for human exceptionalism, because for centuries we have placed ourselves on this untouchable pedestal. We've been entirely convinced that our capacity for complex language makes us completely unique on this planet.
It really forces a massive recalibration of our place in the world. I mean, when you trace our evolutionary lineage back, our last common ancestor with these underwater neighbors was the small, furry creature called Boreotheria.
Boreotheria, right.
Yeah, and that thing scurried around the feet of dinosaurs over 90 million years ago. So since then, we have been on entirely independent evolutionary paths.
Completely separate.
Completely. Yet, we are finally gathering the data to realize we aren't the only ones on Earth having nuanced conversations.
Which brings us to today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today we have a stack of sources that will completely upend how you view the ocean and, honestly, the fundamental nature of language itself.
It's some truly groundbreaking stuff.
It really is. We are synthesizing recent marine biology reports, massive updates from an organization called Project CETI, that's the Cetacean Translation Initiative, and a new linguistics paper published in the Proceedings B Journal, led by Gapper Begu at UC Berkeley.
Yeah, the Berkeley study is central to all this.
The mission today is to unpack how the sperm whale has independently evolved a system of communication that is structurally and statistically astonishing in its similarity to human phonology.
And to really appreciate the weight of this discovery, I mean, we have to recognize the historical blind spots we've had.
Oh, absolutely.
We are talking about an animal that is incredibly vocal, yet science didn't even officially confirm they made sounds until the 1950s.
Which is just crazy to me.
Right. Up until very recently, the consensus was that the sounds they produced were just like acoustic garbage. Just a biological Morse code used merely for basic echolocation.
Which, okay, makes sense when you consider the environment. It's not like you can just walk up to a sperm whale with a microphone.
No, definitely not.
These are enormous pelagic mammals. Their primary food source is giant squid, so that means they dive into the deep, pitch-black ocean trenches, staying under immense pressure for up to 50 minutes at a time.
It's an incredibly extreme environment.
And then they surface for maybe 10 minutes to breathe before plummeting back down into the abyss. The window to observe them is incredibly narrow. The logistical nightmare of recording them is just immense.
It is. And the breakthrough only happened because we developed the technology to actually ride along with them.
Right, the tags.
Yeah. Researchers started using D-tags. These are highly advanced, non-invasive digital tags outfitted with suction cups.
So you just stick them on?
Basically, yeah. You stick these onto the whale's back when they surface, and these devices record high-resolution acoustics and movement data in that high-pressure deep-sea environment.
Wow.
And when researchers finally retrieved and analyzed this clean audio, they heard sequences of short, sharp clicks. They termed these click sequences codas.
Codas, got it.
To the unassisted human ear, a coda just sounds like a staccato tapping. Click, 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 click.
But assuming it's just a rigid Morse code, ignores a critical behavioral observation. Like David Gruber, the founder of Project CETI, pointed out something fascinating in the source material about when and where these codas are actually used.
Yeah, the context is everything.
The whales don't typically use these specific communicative codas while they are deep-sea hunting. They use them near the surface during social times, and they physically bring their heads right next to each other.
It's very close quarters.
It's almost startlingly intimate. Like, if you wanted to discuss the intricacies of a complex Chaucer novel with someone, you wouldn't yell it from opposite ends of a noisy football stadium.
No, of course not.
You would get up close to have a focused, sophisticated conversation. They are literally clicking right into each other's heads.
Exactly. And the mechanism they use to produce those clicks is a marvel of evolutionary engineering. It requires entirely different acoustic machinery than what we use.
Because they obviously don't have vocal cords.
Right. Humans rely on vocal folds and the shape of our vocal tract to generate and modulate sound. A sperm whale uses a specialized organ system.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, the sound source is a pair of vibrating structures called phonic lips, which are actually an evolutionary adaptation of their right nasal passage.
Wait, their nose?
Yeah, basically. The sound then travels through the massive spermaceti organ and hits the distal air sac, which acts as a massive acoustic filter.
That's incredible.
It really is. It is a biological synthesizer taking up a huge portion of their head.
So if they are generating sound with an entirely different biological synthesizer, interpreting it requires us to step outside our own sensory biases.
Absolutely.
Because you mentioned that to us, it just sounds like a series of distinct clicks, but that's purely an artifact of human psychoacoustics, right?
Yes, the human threshold for pitch perception plays a huge trick on us here.
Oh, so?
If we hear a series of pulses at a rate below 30 hertz, meaning 30 pulses per second, our brain processes them as individual distinct sounds. It sounds like a rattle or a snare drum. But the moment those clicks speed up and cross that 30 hertz threshold, our brains blur them together and we perceive a continuous tone or a pitch.
So because the whale clicks are relatively slow, we hear the individual components. But another animal might hear the whole melody.
Exactly. The psychoacoustic models suggest whales have a slightly lower threshold for pitch perception.
Oh, interesting.
We see this in other massive mammals. Elephants, for example, communicate using infrasonic rumbles with fundamental frequencies between 14 and 34 hertz.
Which we can't even really hear.
Right. Now, apply that to the sperm whale codas.
Yeah.
Researchers isolated specific codas, like the 8i coda, which has a click rate of 20.9 hertz.
Okay.
Another, the 5R1 coda, operates around 15.3 hertz. Because these fall below our 30 hertz threshold, human ears dissect them into a staccato rhythm.
We just hear the individual beats.
Yeah, but to the whales, they are perceiving the rapid rate of these clicks as a fundamental pitch.
Meaning, decades of acoustic research might have been fundamentally flawed because we were analyzing the rhythm of a snare drum when we should have been looking for the melody of a cello.
That's a great way to put it.
We were physically incapable of hearing the music. It makes total sense why the recent application of advanced artificial intelligence was the catalyst here.
The AI was absolutely crucial.
Right, because if the patterns exist in a frequency range our brains don't process as language, machine learning algorithms, which have no auditory biases, would be the only way to map the structural spectral properties of those sounds.
And that AI analysis of those spectral properties is the foundation of Gaffer Bigu's linguistics paper.
The Proceedings B paper.
Yes. The algorithms removed the temporal gaps between the clicks and analyzed the raw acoustic energy.
And what did they find?
The findings revealed that these codas form a structured acoustic alphabet. And the most startling revelation within that alphabet is the presence of actual verifiable vowels.
Okay, this is where we need to redefine our terms a bit, because we intuitively associate vowels with the physical manipulation of a jaw, tongue, and licks.
Right, human anatomy.
Yeah, you drop your jaw for an open, you pull your lips tight for an E. Obviously, a sperm whale doesn't have a human jaw or flexible lips.
No, they definitely don't.
So making a vowel without that anatomy requires us to look at the physics of the sound rather than the shape of the mouth, right?
Exactly. In pure acoustics, a vowel is defined by formants.
Formants.
Formants are broad, distinct peaks of acoustic energy in the sound spectrum. When a human changes the shape of their vocal tract, they are manipulating those energy peaks to create different vowels.
I see.
The researchers discovered that the sperm whale's phonic lips and that massive distal air sac function as a perfect source filter model. They're independently manipulating acoustic peaks just like we do.
That is wild.
The data revealed two highly distinct, discrete categories of codas based entirely on these formants.
And they categorize them based on the number of acoustic peaks, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, codas with clicks that contain only one formant peak are classified as acodas. Codas with clicks containing two distinct formant peaks are icodas.
You've got it.
And looking at the data from the paper, the precision is staggering. The whales don't randomly mix them. A single coda will consist of a sequence of pure I-clicks or pure I-clicks.
And the deliberate control over these frequencies even extends to dynamic manipulation.
What do you mean?
Well, the researchers found instances where codas feature a sliding frequency over the duration of the coda.
Which acts exactly like a human diphthong.
Yes.
When you say a word like coin or sight in English, your vowel physically transitions from one shape to another in the middle of the syllable.
Right, the sound moves.
The whales are executing that exact same dynamic frequency slide within their clicks.
They possess a highly refined mechanism for generating distinct vowel categories. But, the presence of different sounds isn't enough to constitute a language.
You're right, obviously.
The true paradigm shift in the Proceedings B paper is the discovery of phonology.
The grammar of it all.
Exactly, the complex, rule-based system governing how these sounds behave when placed in sequences.
Because that's the difference between a dog having a repertoire of barks and whines and an actual linguistic architecture. It's not just the sounds, it's the grammar of how they interact.
Very true.
Let's look at the first major structural rule the researchers identified: the interaction between the rhythm of the coda and the vowel quality.
Yeah, this is fascinating. The data clearly shows that the underlying rhythm dictates the vowel usage.
How so?
As we discussed, a coda has a rhythm, or a type. A 1+1+3 coda has a specific, uneven timing. A 5R coda is 5 evenly spaced clicks.
Okay, so uneven versus steady.
Right. The researchers mapped these rhythms against the A and I vowels. In the uneven 1+1+3 rhythm, the vowels are split about half are A and half are I.
Interesting.
But in the steady 5R rhythm, the A vowel dominates almost exclusively. The rhythm and the vowel are intrinsically linked.
Wait, that interaction operates exactly like a tonal language.
It really does.
Think about Mandarin Chinese. You have the baseline phonetic sound, like ma. But the tone, the rhythmic delivery of the pitch, completely dictates the meaning.
Yes, the tone changes everything.
Like a high-level tone gives you ma, meaning mother. A rising tone gives you ma, meaning hemp. A falling rising tone, ma, means horse.
Ma, mother, ma, lamb, ma, horse, ma, scold. 你学会了吗?
Exactly.
So the whales are layering the rhythm of the coda and the vowel quality together, meaning the intersection of those two properties is likely what carries the semantic weight.
That's the running theory, yes.
Right.
And the complexity layers even further when you examine the physical duration of these vowels, which brings us to the concept of intrinsic duration.
Intrinsic duration. Okay, what's that?
When the team measured the codas across the board, a universal rule emerged. The single-formant codas are fundamentally and universally longer in duration than the two-formant codas.
Which, if you think about the physics of sound generation, is kind of a universal necessity.
What do you mean?
In human speech, opening your vocal tract wide to produce a low, open ha physically requires more time to articulate than the tight, restricted movement needed for a high E.
Oh, right. The physical movement takes longer.
Yeah, that intrinsic durational rule applies across almost all human languages. Even though the whales are using a spermaceti organ instead of a jaw, their biological synthesizer follows the exact same acoustic limitations. Vowels just take longer to produce.
That's a brilliant comparison. But, the researchers wanted to know if this timing was always just a physical byproduct or if the whales were actively controlling it to change meaning.
Right. Is it on purpose?
Exactly. And this led to the discovery of contrastive lengths.
Contrastive length.
When they isolated just the I-codas and plotted their durations, the data didn't cluster around a single average length. It formed a bimodal distribution.
So they clustered into two distinct groups, short I's and long E's.
Yeah.
So they aren't just letting the physics dictate the length, they are intentionally holding certain vowels longer. That is contrastive length. It's an intentional choice.
In human terms, look at Hungarian. The word bor, with a short O, translates to wine. But if a speaker actively holds that vowel longer to say bor, the meaning shifts entirely to boron, the chemical element.
That's exactly what we're seeing.
Finnish and Arabic do the same thing. The whales are deliberately wielding vowel length as a structural tool.
And importantly, the data also controls for individual variance, which is crucial for proving this is a learned behavior rather than a hardwired robotic instinct.
Because if it was just instinct, they'd all sound identical.
Exactly. By running statistical models that isolated individual whales, researchers proved that different whales have different baseline tempos.
Oh, like how everyone has that one friend who speaks a mile a minute and another who draws out every single syllable.
Yes, exactly like that.
If every whale communicated at the exact same robotic tempo, you could argue it's just a rigid genetic reflex. The fact that they have habitual individual speaking rates proves they are actively generating the language, not just executing a biological program. It's real-time processing. And that active real-time processing of this language is most evident in the final and arguably most sophisticated linguistic property they discovered: Co-articulation.
Co-articulation. This one blew my mind.
It's incredible. As we established, a single coda is usually uniform, all clicks or all I clicks.
Right.
But the massive data sets revealed edge cases where a coda contained a mismatch. For example, an I coda might start with a rogue click.
And when you look closely at the context of those mismatches, it reveals incredible cognitive processing.
It really does.
Because those mismatched clicks aren't random errors. They occur almost exclusively when a whale is in the process of transitioning from an a coda to an I coda. The rogue edge click matches the vowel of the preceding or the upcoming coda. The whale is anticipating the linguistic change.
And the mental processing power required for that is immense.
Seriously.
The animal has to know the sequence of sounds it plans to make, recognize the physical transition required for the upcoming vowel, and adjust the current acoustic output in real time to prepare for it.
It's anticipatory grammar. And humans do the exact same thing without even realizing it.
Would you?
Oh, yeah. Co-articulation is why, if you say a made-up word like Eba, your mouth shapes the E differently right from the start, because your brain knows that the high, tight I is coming next.
Oh, I see.
But if you say Eba, your mouth shapes the E much lower because it's preparing for the wide A. The fact that a creature navigating the crushing depths of the ocean is executing real-time anticipatory grammar to alter its formats, it defies everything we thought we knew about animal intelligence.
It really does. When you aggregate these structural realities, the tonal interaction of rhythm and vowel, the universal rules of intrinsic duration, the intentional use of contrastive length, individual baseline tempos, and the sheer computational complexity of co-articulation, the conclusion is inescapable.
It's a real language?
This is a highly complex, acquired communication system. We even see evidence that different regional clans of sperm whales utilize different dialects, proving these linguistic rules are culturally transmitted across generations, not inherited genetically.
Which paints a completely new picture of their day-to-day existence. We are looking at a mammal that sleeps by floating completely vertically in the water column, like an eerie underwater pillar.
It's a strange visual.
It is. The environment is so alien, yet the need for this dense, culturally transmitted language implies a deeply nuanced societal structure.
Oh, definitely. The cultural richness described by Gapper Begu and the marine biologists is striking.
What's their society like?
Sperm whales live in complex matrilineal social units. While mature males eventually leave to live mostly solitary lives, the females and the immature calves form tight-knit, multi-generational clans. They rely heavily on each other for survival.
Right, they have grandmas.
Yes, they do.
They have a designated babysitting system where older whales protect the calves at the surface while the mothers undergo those brutal 50-minute dives to hunt squid.
It's a very supportive community.
And Project CETI actually captured video footage recently that beautifully contextualizes why they need this language. Collaborative births.
Oh, that footage is amazing.
When a female sperm whale gives birth, the other members of the matrilineal unit physically surround her. They support her in the water, and the acoustic data shows they are highly, constantly vocal during the entire process. They are communicating through their most vulnerable, critical life events.
It shows how essential this language is to their survival.
So if you are listening to this, you're probably thinking the exact same thing I am right now. We have the linguistic framework, and we know they are discussing vital survival behaviors. Are we actually going to be able to talk back to them? Can this be translated?
Well, the researchers at Project CETI are remarkably pragmatic about the timeline.
Okay, what's the timeline?
David Gruber notes that right now, despite this massive breakthrough, humanity is essentially at the level of a 2-year-old just learning to babble and recognize a few distinct words.
That makes sense.
The immediate hurdle is linking the vast acoustic database to specific behavioral contexts.
But the goals they've set aren't science fiction, right? Project CEU has a stated objective to comprehend 20 different specific vocalized expressions within the next 5 years.
20 expressions in 5 years, yes.
They want to isolate the exact syntactic sequences related to specific actions, like nursing or diving or sleeping.
And it requires an incredible synthesis of video data, movement data from the D tags, and the acoustic AI model.
That's a lot of data.
It is. But Gruber believes that while a fully fluent philosophical conversation might be a distant proposition, basic two-way communication is not outlandish.
That is so exciting.
As we secure more funding, deploy better sensors, and refine these machine learning models, we will mature from that 2-year-old stage. We finally have the sensory tools to decode the data that has always been there.
It is a profoundly humbling realization. This deep dive has taken us from the assumption that these massive creatures were just mindlessly echoing Morse code in the dark, to the understanding that they are manipulating acoustic formants, wielding contrastive vowel length, and utilizing anticipatory grammar.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
We finally have the technological capacity and the scientific humility to acknowledge a complex language that has been echoing through the deep ocean for over 20 million years.
And, the implications of this research extend far beyond marine biology.
Oh, for sure.
They force us to interrogate the very origins of complex thought. I mean, we share almost zero physical resemblance with the sperm whale.
Right. Nothing in common.
We evolved on dry land, developing hands, vocal cords, and tools. They evolved in a high-pressure aquatic void, developing massive flukes, spermaceti organs, and vibrating phonic lips.
Completely different worlds.
Yet completely independent of one another, separated by 90 million years of divergent evolution, both species arrived at a linguistic structure governed by the exact same mathematical rules and phonological behaviors.
So, the next time you speak, consider that the grammatical rules shaping your sentence might not be a unique human invention. If an entirely alien intelligence in the deep ocean relies on the same mathematical structures of duration, tone, and co-articulation, then perhaps these aren't just human rules.
It's something much bigger.
Exactly. They might be a universal law of nature, the inevitable mathematics of communication for any intelligent, highly social species trying to survive in this universe.